We're following several big stories right now on CBS 6 News.
Including major developments in the Wrgb limo crash investigation.
I'm Liz Bishop. The Ntsb releases its long-awaited safety recommendations following the Wrgb limo crash. I'll break it down for you and have a one-on-one interview with the Ntsb chairman.
Also breaking, several dead when a World War II plane crashes into a fireball. New information just into our newsroom.
And a health scare for Senator and presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. What we've learned about his condition now on CBS 6 News at 5.
CBS 6 News starts now with breaking news.
Two breaking developments today as we approach 1 year since the Wrgb limo crash. The Ntsb releasing recommendations and new findings from its investigation.
And the trial for limo operator Nauman Hussein now delayed by 2 months. We have extensive team coverage tonight over the next couple of hours. Reporters Leanda Rosa, Heather Kovar, and Emily DeFisciani all working today's big story. But we start with CBS 6's Liz Bishop, who took our questions straight to the source of this report. She is live in D.C. tonight. Liz, what did you learn?
Greg, Ntsb Chairman Robert Sumwalt explained to me in an extended interview that his safety recommendations couldn't wait until they were able to put together a final report, including a probable cause. And he also didn't think it would be in place by the time we thought that the trial of Nauman Hussein was going to start in January. But he says these recommendations, these safety ideas, can save lives.
Probably never know if the passengers could have survived the crash forces. But we do know that in the aft part of the vehicle retained its survivable space. That part we do know. It was not crushed.
Ntsb Chairman Robert Sumwalt explaining to me what triggered this interim safety report dealing with seatbelt use. While he cannot say definitively if it would have made a difference, Sumwalt told me inadequate seats, improper seatbelts, and lack of seatbelt use made survival of the passengers all but impossible.
We need occupants of vehicles to be properly restrained.
We learned the driver, Scott Lisanicchia, was wearing a belt, but the force of the crash was too great to save him. These are our first actual images of the crushed vehicle. Many of the problems cited in the report occurred because the original vehicle was modified to fit more passengers. Seatbelts that did not line up properly, seat frames that separated from their anchors, lap belts that were not visible.
Once that vehicle is stretched, it's now in a different category. So those same safety standards that kept passengers or kept occupants safe as a passenger car, many of those no longer apply now that it's in a different category.
Sumwalt told me the final report is likely to deal with standardizing limos and looking at ways to regulate modifications. Where might you go next?
We certainly will be looking at the brakes. When you have a vehicle that obviously does not stop at a stop sign, the brakes are something that we feel are very important. So we'll be looking at the mechanical condition of the vehicle. We'll be looking at driver factors. What was the condition of the driver? We'll be looking at the oversight, the state oversight, the federal oversight.
But for now, this interim report is recommending that New York State implement as part of its inspection process seatbelts that are functional and accessible in all limos in the state, adding that mandatory seatbelt laws in New York would decrease fatalities. Sumwalt's team is also recommending the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration require all newly modified vehicles to have lap and shoulder belts for each passenger, and to ensure that seating systems modified for new vehicles meet some minimum performance standards so they can maintain their integrity in a crash. It's important to point out that the Ntsb's recommendations for lap and shoulder belts for each passenger's seating position is limited to new vehicles only. I asked why.
We felt that it would be too big of a bite on the apple to go back and require all of the hundreds of thousands of limousines that are already out there to be retrofitted.
As for the limo industry itself, Sumwalt says that there's been no need to go to them directly and say, here's what we want you to do, because they're not in a position to get them to comply. But they are encouraging the operators to educate themselves about the importance of seatbelts and how they can save lives, and to make them functional and accessible for all passengers in all limousines. Greg?
Liz, I know you mentioned the final report will come out sometime next year. Any idea exactly when next year?
Well, at first I was asking Robert Sumwalt, about the January date for the start of the Nauman Hussein trial, because obviously the final report is going to include probable cause. But he said he didn't think it would be done by January, maybe not even by February. So it's interesting to think that perhaps once again this could align itself with the start of Hussein's trial. Greg?
All right, Liz, thank you so much for that reporting. We'll see you again in just a matter of minutes. Liz Bishop live for us in Washington, D.C. tonight.
You can read the entire NTSB report on our website, cbs6albany.com, and on the CBS 6 News app. Here are more key takeaways from the report. First, the impact of the crash pushed the front of the vehicle in by 60 inches. That's 5 feet of impact, even though the back part of the limo was left relatively unscathed. The limo had been altered by a company in Springfield, Missouri in 2001. They added modified seats, but the seats did not have belts that adequately lined up for safety purposes. In response, the NTSB recommended minimum seat standards for limousines that are modified.
And the NTSB chair told our Liz Bishop that the seatbelt safety recommendations are a reiteration from a previous report back in 2015. That was in response to an accident involving a bus in September of 2014 in Davis, Oklahoma. 4 members of the North Central Texas College softball team were killed when a tractor trailer crashed into their team bus. 12 others were injured. In a report released by the NTSB in November of 2015, they said that the failure of the players to wear seatbelts on the bus certainly contributed to injuries and recommended seatbelt use on all vehicles that are equipped. Now, it will be up to lawmakers to help implement changes to make limos safer. Many of them are speaking out today. New York Senator Chuck Schumer says the NTSB's new safety recommendations have shown us that we can and absolutely must do more to close the fatal gaps in limo safety standards that contributed decisively to this tragedy. And from local Congressman Antonio Delgado, these findings by the National Transportation Safety Board only begin to describe the systematic failures that occurred on October 6, 2018, and the necessary work ahead to better protect our communities. We owe it to the families and communities affected by this crash, as well as the first responders who rushed to the scene to aid those in need to create stronger safety protections, end quote. State Senator Jim Tedisco is calling for the state legislature to deal with limo safety in a special session, and we'll have more on that at 5:30.
And more breaking news on this big story tonight. The start date for the trial of Nauman Hussein, the operator of Prestige Limousine, has been delayed now from January to March of next year. CBS 6's Leandra Rosa reporting from court today.
Yeah, court just wrapped up here, and we're told that the trial has been moved from January 6th to March 9th. Now, today's conference comes ahead of a pre-trial hearing, which remains scheduled for November 4th. Now, we caught up with Nauman Hussein and his attorney, Lee Kinlan, each walking into court. We were not allowed to bring our cameras in, but I sat in the courthouse. The judge called the prosecution and defense teams into a closed-door meeting, which lasted nearly an hour. They came out and said they discussed scheduling issues and releasing evidence to the defense, including brake fluid samples. The prosecution will also release a grand jury transcript to the defense, which they're planning to do November 15th.
The current law requires us to turn over what's called Rosario material 3 days prior to trial. Now, due to the nature of this case and the volume, that wouldn't be fair, and it would be very detrimental to the families to have prepared for a trial and then to have it adjourned because of the volume. So what we have done is agreed with the court's order to turn over Rosario material that generally would not be turned over until 3 days before trial, earlier.
We're going to stand on a no comment right now.
Okay.
There's still a lot of stuff left to be decided. I think it's best right now just to let the court process take over.
Again, the trial has been moved to March 9th, but that pre-trial hearing remains set at November 4th, and that's the next time they're expected to be here. Reporting in Schoharie, Leandra Rosa, CBS 6 News.
And again, if you want to read the full NTSB safety report, head to cbs6albany.com. It is the first story on our website and the CBS 6 app. Additional reporting from Heather Kovar and Emily DeFisciani still ahead right here on CBS 6 News.
On On to the weather now. Rain falling across parts of the capital region this afternoon. Looks kind of gloomy out there right now as we look at Albany Live. Let's check in right now with Chief Meteorologist Steve LaPointe. How about it, Steve?
All right, Greg. Yeah, certainly a sharp change from the warmth we had around this morning. It's now much, much chillier as temperatures have dropped. We've still got some patches of light rain and drizzle in the Mohawk Valley capital region. It's a little bit more concentrated down here across the eastern Catskills, the Mid-Hudson Valley. Everything gradually sliding off in a southerly direction like this, and with time, will be drying out. It's already dried out across the North Country, and we might see some breaks in the clouds overnight tonight there. Everybody, though, still socked in with the clouds. Freihoffer's quad cam view certainly showing that. Troy and Glens Falls, and this is Lake George and Saratoga Springs. So it is gray, and it's certainly a lot cooler. Look at Bolton Landing at 50 degrees, 57 now Albany, 66 Kingston, where it made the mid-80s today, and Poughkeepsie actually setting a record high temperature at 88 degrees earlier today, and now cooling off considerably. We're down into the low 40s tonight, 30s North Country. I see a cold rain developing for us coming up tomorrow, so fall in full swing, no question about that. Timing out tomorrow's wet weather for you in the next couple of minutes.
All right, thank you, Steve. Tonight, Senator Bernie Sanders has canceled all campaign appearances until further notice as he recovers from a heart procedure. The Democratic presidential candidate's announcement comes less than 2 weeks before the next debate. CBS 6's JT Vetch joined us now live in the studio. JT, Sanders went to the hospital yesterday. We learned this today.
Yeah, that's right, Greg. The 78-year-old Vermont senator felt chest discomfort at a campaign event in Las Vegas yesterday. Tests at a hospital found Bernie Sanders had a blockage in an artery. As a result of that, Sanders had 2 stents inserted to open up that artery, and as we said, the senator is now recovering. Cardiologists say with hundreds of thousands of these common procedures performed every year, the Sanders situation serves as a reminder for Americans to know risk factors for heart disease like diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, and yes, age. The Sanders campaign says the 78-year-old is in good spirits as he rests tonight. This as the hashtag #GetWellBernie has been trending all day with virtual well wishes on all sides of the political aisle. The latest Monmouth University poll shows Bernie Sanders in 3rd place among the Democratic candidates, behind now frontrunner Senator Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden in a close second. Cardiologists tell CBS News most patients who receive stents like this are back to normal in about a week. We'll see. Ann?
Thank you, JT. Tonight, learning more about the victim of a terrible tragedy, an innocent bystander killed during a police pursuit. How he's being remembered next. And then all new at 6, in a field dominated by men, one student is breaking the stereotype. Her story is positively upstate.